My name is Christina Garner, and I am a ghost hostess or ghost guide, one of the original ghost guides since the program was established, I believe, in 2001. Well, I joined because founder of the tour, Aimee, was looking for people to take the first walks, and I had been on ghost walks in other cities like York, England, or Stockholm in Sweden, and I thought it would be wonderful if we could get our own going. And she had done a wonderful job of finding historical and also psychic research and blending them together. So those tours came to life, and I have taken now 22 years of groups around. And some of the interesting groups that I've taken on these tours include the psychics from the Queen Mary haunt came with me. Also, there have been Boy Scout troops and the Red Hat Society ladies. There was radio host Ryder Palmier. He mentioned how he found my eyes so fascinating. And the president of the Rotary Club from Michoacan in Mexico, in Morelia, that's our sister city. So I gave the tour in Spanish to them because I'm a world language and culture instructor. And then imagine taking a tour with the Phantom Coach Society. The Phantom Coach Society is also called the Hearse Owners of Orange County. So these are the people that gather and have like classic car, but they're all hearse owners. So those were some interesting tours that I took. And I think the most interesting, because of my interest and work in the field of world language and culture, is I did take a group of international students from Cal State Fullerton. And I'm going to share with you some of their reactions to our American ghost hunting kind. From their point of view, many cultures, not our own, fully believe that the world is, yes, definitely full of ghosts and spirits, and it's mostly our job to take good care of them. Since the Puritan times, where ghosts were seen as a form of ancestor worship and something that did not want to be included in the founding of Puritan New England. So it still seems to be a deep-seated need, and people are exploding with that energy all over town, putting up their graveyards and their ghost decorations now. But the international students were very eager to go on the tour with me. And a student from Kuwait wanted me to listen to his phone. There is a ghost in my cell phone. When I call my sister, I always hear a strange voice. I want you to listen to it. I want to hear this. A student from Saudi Arabia said, I want you to go to this old insane asylum in Riyadh. Everyone says there are ghosts there. A Vietnamese student said, in my country, a ghost will take over a person to control him, and you have to really do a ritual to make it leave. A student from Brazil told me, my uncle was taken over by a ghost when he was a child, and he spoke in a strange language in the deep voice of an adult. Another student from India asked me if I had seen the YouTube videos of ghosts, and also if this evening we would be detecting ghosts, or if we would also be getting in touch with other spirits and demons, or only ghosts. And one Arabic-speaking student told me that to him, La Llorona, the Mexican folktale, La Llorona sounds like you can't see it in Arabic. So we had a very rich night. Just last night on a tour, I heard from a student with Japanese heritage about river ghosts and what they might be, why they might be around. So I hope we can keep adding more from the world cultures to our tour. So that's some of the interesting encounters that I've had on the way when we go. Now, there are places around town we can't get into a 2-hour walk. There are many other places that people have checked out, like the auditorium. Angela and Vinci's now is closed and we can't go there. The Fullerton Police Department. There are places that have great stories, but we can't get everything in one night, which means you always have to come back next year to see more of what we've been finding out. I have the view that the reason that people love to do ghost walks and join in with great enthusiasm is a sort of the larger picture of we need times to honor the dead. We need times for grief and mourning, and our culture doesn't give us much of that. One year I had a woman who told me her mother and brother had just died. She had just lost her family in the last 3 or 4 months, and that she was coping by going to every ghost tour that she could find in Southern California, because every time she went on one, it was an affirmation that people's names would still be spoken and there would still be connection with life and the living. And we really don't, as I said, we're buried, most of us, many of us in the United States, at least those that came over as immigrants, now live far from the bones of our own ancestors. There aren't cemeteries where we can go to pay respects to the dead. Mexico's Day of the Dead is a very healthy ritual for much of the population to allow them that. I spoke to a priest from Transylvania who said that they go, they also go to do the same thing. They clean the graves, spend the night. But actually having a way to do public grief, collective grief, has been really important and lost in our culture. So when we have these ghost tours, which are proliferating across the country over time, many, many places, there's 3 things that we can kind of pin down. One of them is we come to terms more with the architecture of the world that we're living in. We process history, and we also find some way to gather together and deal with death and mourning. And people usually at the end of a tour, they really want to keep talking. They want to share stories. They want to tell the psychic investigators what they saw at their home, what they experienced, and feel validated. And it's really a way for all of us to grow tighter in the community and process what is common to all of us, our fear of death and mourning. And interestingly, where people have had actual trauma around town, that's usually not, it's the distance of time that lets us talk about it. So we're not visiting places where people have suffered recent trauma. We're more looking at places where the distance of time lets us talk about and bring to life these characters around town. This was one of the few things that we were able to keep doing during the pandemic. It's one of the few community events I was able to go through. I said, if we can limit it to 10 people, if we're outdoors, if people can stay 6 feet apart and we can wear masks, we can still do this. So it did not even stop during the pandemic. We still kept going. And in fact, so much of why people started to turn to spiritualism and mediumship was related to the aftermath of World War I in 1918 and 1919. And then 3 times as many people died in the Spanish flu pandemic. So we're kind of at the same point in time as they were in 1923. You're 3 or 4 years out from a major war and a deadly global pandemic, and lots of disruptions to society. We're kind of in the same place right now. So what it has changed a little bit is it's getting harder to get into the building sometimes, because that's usually more related to insurance and liability and modern considerations like that. The stories, I've added some stories based on research in the local historic archives, and you'll have to come on the tour to hear more about vampire bats. There are a lot of historical sources we can add in, as well as the folklore and the tales that people tell. So when we take walks together, people add their own experiences, and we're building up this whole layer of collective myth and folklore that really, the thing that's kind of cool is it's ours. It belongs to us. Other cities don't have it. It's our folklore. It's our city. And also we have this heritage where they've preserved the local architecture. We can look at how it shapes our lives. And some young people recently on a tour told me, geez, we're so lucky that people have done this, because otherwise we just have to tell ghost stories about what are we going to do, McDonald's? It's not going to be the same, as when you have a over 100-year-old building. As a ghost hostess, I really haven't experienced anything while I was walking with crew, but I had watched the footage collected by the North Orange County Paranormal Society, the NOPS guys, and they showed this fascinating footage of a room filled with chandeliers, airless and everything gorgeous, but one crystal, just one, swinging and moving in the air. And they described how entropy should have caused it to slow down and stop, but it didn't. It kept moving autonomously for a long time. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. But one summer, I went in there before the owner installed air conditioning, and a hot, still day, and I was in that room alone, and it did it. It was moving by itself, just one crystal and one chandelier. And I remember looking around going, anybody around? Anybody see this? Nobody? Just me? Okay. So I have to say, I've had at least one experience. You never get exactly the same tour, and it depends on who's on the tour, because sometimes people have... The other night, one of the staff was able to tell about one of his personal experiences in one of the locations, and that becomes part of the, our collective folklore too. So you never know. You're not going to have this. Never going to have the same tour twice. Exactly the same tour twice.